First question, Butch. How important was the toss
Extremely.
in this series? Because if you look at the raw results, every game was won by the side that won the toss and decided to have a
extremely.
bowl first.
And the one actually that the one that where we got 218 in the fourth game that the West Indies chased down. I think, and I'm relatively sure because the conditions weren't wildly different between one game and the next. It was a much hotter, much drier, much windier day on that particular day, and the pitch actually started without the moisture in it that all of the other ones had done. It was the second time it had been used. It was perfect. It was like this table, properly dry. So there was no massive difference between the guys batting first. But the problem had been in the previous games was that you'd be three or four down, or you'd found it so difficult to get off to any sort of start batting first in both the ODIs and the T20s because of the moisture in the pitch, that by the time it had dried out, you were so far behind the eight ball, you couldn't make enough to kind of defend it when it was your turn to come out and bowl when there was dew. On that occasion, when England got 218, the dew didn't come in until much, much later in the piece. But the West Indies had already won the game by the time we got to the halfway point. And that was a combination of two things, really. One was that England's bowling attack in that fourth game was probably their weakest that they put out in the whole game.
Yeah, so no Archer, no Rashid,
no Archer, no Rashid. Overton didn't bowl. So all of so Mosley.
John Turner made his debut.
Livingston. John Turner was making his debut, so it was a pretty greenhorn attack, which didn't have any of the tools that you would have chosen for that assignment. In the end of it, and so so that one gets wiped out as well, even though England made 218, which I think was a bloody good score, and with a proper bowling attack would have had a half decent chance of defending it and bucking that trend. But pretty much all of the rest of the games, it was absolutely vital you won the toss. Absolutely
and the
vital.
Start times were in part determined by TV scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, so I've had a good old rant about World Cup finals starting at 10 o'clock in the morning in the Caribbean to satisfy audiences elsewhere. And as it turned out, and you can't, it's difficult to blame Cricket West Indies for doing this, but as far as their finances are concerned, but the 4 o'clock starts were basically so that the game started at 8 o'clock at night in England. I mean, there's no other reason for it. And because of that, you got a wild difference between what the conditions were like first time up and what they were like second time up, and that basically screwed all of the games as a contest, which is a real shame. For the players on both sides to kind of feel that there wasn't a great deal that you could do most of the time in terms of overcoming the advantage to chasing is not a great place to start. So if the games, just for example, just so that I'm very clear, had the games started at a more traditional 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, then the conditions would have been similar for both teams because it was around about that time of the night that the dew came down. So you would have had it. So both teams would have had a wet ball. Both teams would have had surface moisture as opposed to in the ground moisture, and you would have had a shootout between batting lineups trying to smash the crap out of it, and it may have been a little bit fairer. But to go from ground moisture, i.e. that the pitch is starting a little bit down, which again is kind of was a product of the weather that we had in pretty much everywhere. There was rain, there was a lot of rain around, and the fact that we only lost one of the matches to it was something of a miracle. They take the covers off 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they were just still damp, So you bowl first, you get the first 6-7 overs where it went around corners, and you were either sort of a 30 for none, or you were, as the West Indies were most of the time, for 5 down for 50 or 60. And that's it, game over.
That fourth game was wild, by the way. West Indies at one point scored 131 in 7 overs before losing 3 wickets in 3 balls to keep England interested.
So Mosley, Livingston and Sam Curran in 7 overs went for 107 between them. And that's what I mean about the bowling attack. Those guys would not have bowled had England had other options during that particular period of carnage.
I've already said this conspiracy theory on the Patreon, but I'm gonna share it on the main pod. So, you would have been on commentary for this, so interesting to hear your thoughts. So, West Indies are 136 for none. They've just scored 131 in 7 overs, and then sort of from nowhere, England take 3 wickets in 3 balls. So Rohan gets Lewis. Then next ball, Hope has run out, non-striker's end. And then the next ball, Nicholas Pooran is bowled by Raham. Your number 5, Shimron Hetmeyer,
is not ready. He comes out buckling his pads up. Yeah.
Hetmeyer doesn't strike me as the sort of bloke who's got his pads on when he's 3 wickets away from coming in, right? And the television umpire takes a very long time to check if the last wicket, Raham bowling Pooran, definitely hit the stumps. Yeah, and I was thinking, but he's definitely bowled. You know, there's nothing else this could possibly be. And there are 7 replays of this. And I was like, surely they know that he's bowled. You don't need replay number 6 is not telling you something the first 5 haven't seen.
So what you're saying is that was a ploy to make sure that Hetmeyer didn't get timed out
just
on the way in.
Just putting it out there.
Well, I mean, it's good. It sits very well with our current climate. But I mean, you know, as far as that whole collapse was concerned, so the story about West Indies cricket all of the time for years and years and years has been, you know, there are too many dot balls, that, you know, they don't rotate strike enough. And I'm kind of watching them and I'm thinking, that's not it. It would be nice if they had more players like Shai Hope in the 11 who could do that. And Shai Hope, who for just incidentally is elevated his strike rate in T20s the last 2 years by about 30 runs per 100 balls, as well as being their best player of spin, etc., etc. How he's not always in that team, I will never know, but that's another story. But the thing that crystallised my thinking around this whole thing, my theory around West Indies white ball cricket, is basically this: they are unbelievable ball strikers, right? They've got this incredibly dangerous batting lineup from 1 to 7, no matter how you shake it up. The issue that kills them is not the amount of dot balls and the lack of rotating a strike, because that would require a different technical aspect to nearly all of their batters, which you'd probably end up losing some of the ball striking capability. So taking on the Hollyoake theory of T20 games, the team who hits more sixes wins. Don't worry about that side of it so much, but do worry about running between the wickets, turning ones into twos, actually running, you know. That whole 3 wickets in 3 balls thing was caused by Joss Butler's unbelievable stop down on the boundary. Yeah. The end of which meant that what's his name? That Evan Lewis ended up staying on strike because somehow they only ran 1. I mean, how that happened.
And there are quite a few instances where there'd be a good bit of fielding from England, and you're like, how have
they only got 1? Yeah, it happened in the game the next night where Bethell had to dive full length and parry the ball off and all that, and so Lewis ended up keeping the strike and then was out the next ball, and the whole thing sort of like stemmed from there. So that's the one thing. You know, actually hit the ball and run as though the ball is not going to go for 6 or 4, and then, you know, try and turn it into 2. You know, don't turn 2s into 1s, and field better. You know. That you end up shaving off, you know, as many singles as you might gain by kind of rotating the strike quite as well. So you actually save your runs there. Your dot balls become pluses by running better and fielding better. Don't worry about changing the rest because you smoke it out of the park. And I reckon that if the focus would change slightly onto that side of things, something that actually takes no technical adjustment, just an attitude adjustment, fielding and running between the wickets, you'd actually find that the West Indies didn't get themselves into as many bits of bother as they do. But anyway, that's my pitch for West Indies white ball coach.
Well, you'll be heading out there again soon. Ben, thoughts on Bethell? How much did he press you over this tour? Early days in his international career, but he looks very good.
Yeah, and it looks like he's kind of working things out as it goes along a bit as well. Like he's sort of belonging and enjoying the challenge of working these things out. Like when he was in that Australia series, there were times against Adam Zampa when he sort of took him down, and times when Adam Zampa sort of took him down. And it looks like he's kind of embracing that challenge against spin, which you're going to have to do if he's going to be, you know, a middle order player in both white ball formats. And yeah, he just looks class and like he's got it. And you can totally see why England really, really rate him, and why everyone who sees him really, really rates him. You know, like Ian Bell saying he's the best 17-year-old he's ever seen, that kind of thing. Like you know, you look at the record overall and you're like, what are England thinking here? And then you watch him for 5 minutes, like, yeah, this makes sense. So yeah, he's a real talent. I guess the thing is that, you know, there is a skill to the art of learning. You have to learn the art of making these big scores, these match-defining scores. And obviously, you know, he's played some very good innings. He's got loads and loads of talent, but that's a skill it looks like he's going to have to learn sort of, you know, on the job at the very, very top level. Like he's going to be in enough England squads now that actually I don't think he's going to get that sort of that time away from it, sort of just learning that skill. And that's going to have to come, you know, with some careful nurturing from from McCullum, I guess.
Well, the interesting one, I think, with Bethell in terms of his development is he got an IPL auction coming up this weekend, and it's one of those mega auctions. So I can see a franchise basically being like, he could be amazing in 3 years' time, and this auction is to ensure he might not play that much, and that means he doesn't play that much more cricket for Warwickshire.
Yeah, and there's your massive thing, isn't it? I mean, I could not imagine being his age, and then suddenly, you get picked for this thing, and you miss the first 2.5 months of the English season at this point in his career. I just don't think it'd be a very good idea. Would it then mean that the opportunity might not come up a little bit later? Probably not. I think he's so young. I hope he doesn't get picked up, and I hope if he does, he doesn't go.
but there is an issue though with the IPL where they're cracking down on these players who sign up and then pull out. So I think if he were to get picked up and then pull out,
well, that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, I would respectfully suggest that he doesn't put his name in then in that case.
Which you don't get punished for. So if you've never played it before,
you
can not sign up and you're not punished down the line. You're only punished if you're someone who has played before.
My worry would be that he would go and would do exactly what happened to Jason Roy perhaps when he was in the pomp of his international career. We're talking about somebody right at the very beginning. Sat on the bench for 3 years on the trot, hardly playing any cricket, and then. I'm not saying that this is going to happen to Jacob Bethell because he is very, very talented and he is incredibly young. But you just think, just keep playing, keep learning, keep enjoying it, and those opportunities will come as they will.
Ben, Jordan Cox had a tricky tour. 17 off 31, 4 off 19, 1 off 6 in the ODIs. Do you think there's any chance that this England regime look at this tour and think, well, actually, Bethell might be our guy for New Zealand?
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think it's still unlikely. I think for a few reasons. One is just that it's the who keeps wicket thing. Obviously, they can give the gloves to Pope,
who's done it before in New Zealand.
He has done it before, but they also have put a lot of stock behind him at number 3, and this was seen as sort of a make or break series for him at number 3, at least in the media. Don't wonder if England see it that way, but there's still that chance with with other guys sort of coming through. But that is how England also like to think, that they as shown with the selection of Bethell in the first place, they will just look at who they like the look of and pick based on that, and that will go for the nets as well. So I guess the question with Cox, and also in some ways that could seem harsh on Cox. He was had a brilliant summer for Essex, who looked like he kind of made that breakthrough, capping on his on the loads of talent that he has. But in some ways also that can actually be it's a long time between the end of the county summer and the start of that New Zealand series. That's a long time to to just be out of form, and that's not when you want to necessarily be making your Test debut. So actually, it might be that they look at Cox and Nets, and it might be that he goes in there and he's playing Bryden, Carson, Ollie Stone really nice, and actually this guy's fine. We'll just stick him in there. It might be that he can't lay a bat in it, and they think that partly they think Bethell's the better bet right now. They'll think actually this is not the right time to put this guy in there. It's also interesting, actually, I was thinking just with because we've talked about the fact that Smith is missing this tour, and that lessens the pressure on Pope for now, but maybe increase it next summer if Cox shows he's got something and can keep wicket, and then that allows you to get more out of Jamie Smith. But it's interesting if you strip everything away from it, the fact that that Pope is England's number 3, that Smith has come into the side as a wicketkeeper, and you actually kind of look at Smith versus Pope and think, who is the guy that we need to that we think we can get the most of out as a batter? And how long is it actually before England could even just do that switch and think, Pope is the streaky player whose technique might not suit number 3 exactly, and think, okay, well, let's just give him a few goes at 6 or 7 with the gloves and see if we can get Smith.
You're saying Bethell at 3 for New Zealand then?
Well, no. Well, that is the thing, is that if you end up picking him over Cox, then do you have to then reshuffle the whole batting lineup? Or either way is punchy. I don't know if it'd be Bethell at 3.
No, I definitely see it. But what do you make of Jordan Cox's series? Because he almost didn't face enough balls for us to get a serious impression of how he did. I thought Alistair Cook made quite an interesting point on the TNT coverage. He basically said, you just don't know how a player makes that step up. Cox is a really confident player, really believes in his own game, but for whatever reason, in those 3 ODIs, it didn't work out. Can you read that much into it? It's just 3. 50 over innings in totally different conditions to what he's likely to face in New Zealand.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's a damn sight easier to read something into somebody doing very well than it is into somebody doing very badly. Or, very badly is probably the wrong descriptor. But yeah, everyone's seduced and beguiled by Bethell, rightly so. And which leaves you going, well, what's all the fuss about Cox? I think they've made a call. He's going to bat at 3 in New Zealand. Let's make a judgment call after that. I guess the slightly worrying thing is the 2 short ball dismissals. First one was batting second. Shamar Joseph bounced him out in the Livingston 100 game, and then obviously the absolute snorter from a rather upset Alzari Joseph in the first match in Barbados. So look, warning lights flashing when that happens to somebody 2 games in 2, but let's give them the Test series in New Zealand and make a call then.